What if I told you there's an invisible portal within you, a silent passage connecting your thoughts to the forces that shape your reality? This portal isn't somewhere far away, nor does it require years of meditation to open. It's active right now, at this very moment, as you listen to these words. Most people believe they live by the power of will, but the truth is that almost everything you do is guided by a part of the mind you rarely notice, the subconscious. It's the part that keeps your heart beating, regulates your emotions, and turns your words and beliefs into concrete experiences. Joseph Murphy called the subconscious the secret factory of life. Everything you send into it, whether fear, faith, doubt, or love, returns multiplied. The subconscious doesn't argue, it doesn't question, and it has no sense of humor. It simply obeys. And that's why learning to speak to it is one of the most powerful abilities a human being can master. Imagine the subconscious as the most fertile soil in the world. Each thought is a seed, each word, a command. You can choose to plant fear or faith, limitation or prosperity. But once the seed falls, it grows, inevitably. So what are you cultivating within yourself today? Murphy said the first step to mastering the subconscious is recognizing that it is always listening. Even when you call yourself unworthy, even when you complain about life, it records. And it turns those words into commands that manifest as fatigue, failure, or scarcity. But when you change your language, when you start saying, I can, I am capable, I trust, the portal opens. And the subconscious begins working in your favor, rearranging people, circumstances, and even events to fulfill your new orders. Right now, this invisible portal is waiting for a new command. All you need to do is speak with faith, feel with truth, and give thanks as if it were already done. Because the subconscious doesn't live in the future, it acts now. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and keep walking this inner path. Write in the comments, my subconscious obeys the voice of faith. That will be your first decree, and the beginning of a new inner creation. Have you ever stopped to think about the power hidden in the words you repeat every day? They may seem like simple expressions, empty phrases, but each one is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious. What you say about yourself slowly becomes the life you live. Many people believe they are victims of circumstances when, in truth, they are prisoners of the words that created the world around them. They say, I never have luck. Nothing works out for me. My life is a struggle. And without realizing it, they turn these phrases into decrees that the subconscious fulfills with perfect obedience. Joseph Murphy explained that the subconscious is like a faithful servant, it never argues, it simply executes. When you affirm something with emotion, it understands it as a command and begins working to turn that idea into reality. It doesn't matter if the phrase is positive or negative, the subconscious doesn't distinguish between what helps or harms, it only obeys. Every word you speak carries a vibration that shapes your life. When you say, I'm tired, the subconscious orders the body to reduce its energy. When you repeat, I never succeed, it creates invisible barriers to prove you right. But when you declare, life is on my side, I am guided by a higher force, something shifts. The hidden mind receives the command and begins aligning everything to confirm this new belief. Words are codes that program destiny. Each sentence is a spiritual decree. And the more emotion we attach to them, the faster they imprint on the subconscious. That's why anger, fear, and guilt are so dangerous, they carry enough emotional intensity to create unwanted realities. Murphy said that to speak is to create. And if you want to change your life, you must start by changing what you say, out loud and in silence. Observe your conversations, notice your automatic phrases, your words of self-sabotage. Replace them with affirmations of power and faith. Say to yourself, I am capable. My path is being prepared. The best is coming to me. The words you repeat today will become the facts of your tomorrow. Speak with faith, clarity, and love, because the universe, through your subconscious, is always listening. What you think every day silently shapes the path you will later call destiny. Most people believe the future depends on luck, chance, or coincidence. But Joseph Murphy taught that destiny is nothing more than the inevitable result of the thoughts you nurture and repeat with emotion. Every idea that passes through your mind leaves an impression on the subconscious, and every impression seeks to become expression. This means that nothing you experience is random. Your outer world is the perfect reflection of what you sustain within your inner world. If you think of scarcity, the subconscious creates situations to confirm the lack. If you think of failure, it subtly guides you toward paths that make you give up. But if you choose to nurture images of prosperity, confidence, and faith, the subconscious reorganizes everything so it can appear. It is like fertile soil that grows any seed, good or bad. And the harvest always depends on what you plant in thought. Murphy explained that the conscious mind is the gardener, and the subconscious is the garden. If you allow thoughts of fear and doubt to enter, you are planting weeds. But if you sow ideas of success, love, and abundance, the subconscious takes care of making them bloom effortlessly. Nothing is more powerful than a consistent belief. Because the subconscious doesn't react to fleeting wishes but to what is repeated until it becomes conviction. Once a thought is accepted as truth, it sinks into the subconscious and begins to materialize as circumstance. That's why destiny is not written in the stars, it is programmed within the mind. And every thought you decide to sustain is a brick in the invisible structure of tomorrow. You cannot harvest peace if you plant conflict, nor abundance if you sow fear. Life simply obeys the law of correspondence, the outer reflects the inner. From now on, observe what you cultivate in your mind. Replace worry with trust, doubt with faith, and fear with love. Because what you repeat with emotion becomes direction, and what you hold with faith becomes destiny. Emotion is the fuel of creation. You can repeat a phrase 1,000 times, but if it isn't charged with feeling, it fades into the air like an empty echo. Joseph Murphy said that the subconscious doesn't understand words, it understands vibrations. And emotion is the vibrational language it obeys without question. When you affirm something with true emotion, love, faith, fear, or anger, the subconscious records that feeling as a direct command. It doesn't distinguish between good or bad, fair or unfair. It only obeys the emotional force that accompanies your words. That's why what truly shapes your life is not what you say with your mouth, but what you feel while saying it. Saying, "I am prosperous," with fear doesn't create prosperity, the subconscious feels the fear and executes what it carries, scarcity. But saying, "I am prosperous," with gratitude, confidence, and certainty is like planting a seed in fertile soil. The right emotion activates the order. Murphy called this, the marriage between word and feeling. The conscious mind is the seed, but emotion is the water that makes it grow. Without emotion, a decree is just an idea, with emotion, it becomes creative power. Every time you react with anger, your body receives that vibration and turns it into tension. Every time you feel love, your body responds with harmony. The subconscious translates feelings into chemistry, and chemistry into reality. It is the artist that paints the picture of your life with the colors you offer through your emotions. That's why true mental mastery begins with emotional mastery. You don't need to eliminate emotions, just learn to use them as allies. When you feel fear, transform it into faith. When you feel pain, turn it into understanding. And when you feel doubt, remember that faith is just fear reorganized by trust. Emotion is the divine seal of command. Everything you feel intensely is sent as a decree to the subconscious, and it obeys with absolute fidelity. So learn to feel what you wish to live, and your hidden mind will take care of the rest. Doubt is the silent poison of the mind. It doesn't destroy all at once, it corrodes slowly, until nothing grows. Joseph Murphy said that faith and doubt cannot live in the same heart, one builds, the other tears down. And the subconscious, being obedient, follows whichever voice speaks the loudest. Every time you affirm something with faith but then question whether it will work, you cancel your own order. The subconscious doesn't understand, maybe, it only knows yes or no. That's why when the conscious mind prays with faith and then doubts, the subconscious becomes confused, unsure which command to follow. It's like a messenger told to take a step forward and then one back, never moving anywhere. Murphy explained that doubt is born when the mind tries to understand how. But the how is not your responsibility, it belongs to the divine intelligence that moves the universe. Your part is to declare, believe, and remain at peace. The rest is fulfilled by the law of the subconscious effortlessly. The man of little faith is like an impatient gardener who digs up the seed every day to see if it's growing. He doesn't trust the invisible process, and so, he never harvests. But the one who plants and lets the soil work in silence will always see what he has sown bloom. Doubt is the denial of one's own prayer. It's saying, I believe, while secretly thinking, what if it doesn't work? Every thought of uncertainty is a blow to the structure of faith. And every time you worry, you reinforce exactly what you fear. That's why the first step to mastering the subconscious is to choose a side. You either feed faith, or you feed doubt, both cannot grow in the same soil. Faith is not pretending there's no fear, it's deciding not to let fear lead. It's repeating truth until it sounds louder than the noise of insecurity. Doubt paralyzes, but faith moves mountains. And when you hold certainty even without seeing, the subconscious understands that the command is firm and begins to act. It doesn't need proof, it needs conviction. And what begins as a simple act of believing ends up becoming the force that transforms your entire reality. Joseph Murphy said the subconscious is like an obedient child, it accepts without question everything you say with emotion and conviction. It doesn't judge, reason, or distinguish truth from falsehood, it simply records and executes. And that's where the power, and the danger, of the human mind lies. For years, you were trained to think negatively. You learned to fear the future, doubt yourself, and expect the worst. These ideas repeated so often that the subconscious accepted them as absolute truths. And now, without realizing it, it continues to obey those old commands. But Murphy taught that it's possible to re-educate the subconscious, and that this process begins with a single decision. To no longer accept thoughts that contradict your faith. Re-educating the mind is like teaching a child again, patience, consistency, and love are essential. The method is simple but requires discipline. Everything you want the subconscious to accept must be repeated until it feels natural. It's not enough to affirm once, you must engrave the new belief with emotion, repetition, and imagination. Murphy called this mental substitution, replacing the old thought with the new until the old one loses its power. For example, if you've always said, I can't, start declaring, I am capable. I am strong. I accomplish with ease. At first, your mind may resist, because the subconscious is still attached to the old pattern. But if you persist with faith, repetition becomes conviction, and conviction becomes reality. Murphy said, you are not a victim of your mind, you are its master. And every master trains his apprentice with firmness and love. Speak to your subconscious with authority but also with gentleness. It is not your enemy, it simply follows the orders you gave it. Now it's time to change the command. The secret is simple, replace fear with faith, doubt with certainty, and despair with calm. Repeat the right words until they become your natural way of thinking. Because the subconscious does not resist persistence, it only obeys. And once the new program is installed, your life begins to reflect the harmony that once seemed impossible. Every human mind is a throne. And on that throne sits a silent king, the subconscious. It doesn't speak, it doesn't argue, it simply fulfills every decree it receives from the conscious mind. The problem is that most people issue weak, confused, or contradictory orders, and the subconscious, obedient as ever, delivers equally confused results. Joseph Murphy taught that the secret to giving commands the subconscious cannot refuse is clarity combined with emotion. The subconscious does not respond to timid requests, but to clear, affirmative, and emotionally charged commands. Saying, I want to be healthy, is a wish. Saying, "I am healthy now," in harmony with divine power, is a command. The difference lies in energy. The subconscious does not understand the future, it lives in the eternal present. That's why every effective command must be spoken as if it were already real. When you affirm with faith, "I am free," the subconscious accepts it as fact and begins to reorganize your life to match that truth. But if you say, "Someday I'll be free," it understands that freedom is always far away, and so it remains. Murphy said there are 3 keys to an irresistible order: clarity, emotion, and repetition. Clarity makes the command precise. Emotion gives it creative force. And repetition engraves it deeply into the subconscious. Speak to your subconscious as you would to a loyal servant. With authority, but also with respect. Say what you want, not what you fear. Use simple, direct sentences, always in the present, always with feeling. And when you're done, do not doubt, the decree has been issued, and the law is already in motion. The most common mistake is to repeat a command and then cancel it with opposing thoughts. You affirm, "I am prosperous," and then think, "But money never comes." That internal conflict stops the subconscious from acting. Murphy compared this to writing a check and tearing it up before handing it over. To give a command the subconscious cannot refuse, you must feel the truth before it appears. Faith is the seal that confirms the decree. When you speak with emotion, certainty, and gratitude, the subconscious bows, and the invisible begins to obey. Faith is the secret code that unlocks the doors of the invisible. Joseph Murphy said that faith is not blind belief, it is the inner knowing that what you affirm already exists on the spiritual plane and is on its way to manifesting. It is the bridge between the visible and the invisible, between thought and reality. The conscious mind forms the desire. The subconscious executes the order. But faith is the force that connects them and sets the power in motion. Without faith, the command lacks the energy to cross the gap between what is imagined and what becomes real. Murphy often said, "You don't need to see to believe, you need to believe to see." The material world is only the reflection of the images held by the mind. And faith is the fuel that turns those images into reality. When you believe with emotion, the subconscious receives the order as law and begins to act immediately. Faith is the language the subconscious understands perfectly. It doesn't need explanations, doubts, or human logic. It simply says, "This is real," and the subconscious obeys. That's why doubt paralyzes creation, but faith releases it. Imagine faith as an invisible current of electricity. Your word is the switch. When you speak with faith, the circuit closes, divine energy begins to flow. But when you speak with fear, the circuit breaks, and the power stops moving. Murphy explained that true faith is serene. It does not beg, demand, or fear. It simply affirms with peace, "It is done." And behind that calm lies an invincible power, for the mind that believes is aligned with the force that creates worlds. Doubt is human, but faith is divine. And when faith rules the heart, the impossible begins to move. The invisible, obedient, takes form. Because the law is simple, whatever you accept as truth in your mind, the subconscious manifests without fail. The most powerful voice you hear each day is not from the outside world, it's the one speaking inside you. That constant inner dialogue, often silent, is the true architect of your destiny. Because the subconscious is always listening, even when you don't notice. It records every word, every emotion, and every image you hold long enough. Joseph Murphy said, "You become what you think of yourself." And what you think, repeat, and feel in silence feeds the subconscious with precise instructions. If within you echo phrases like, "I can't," "I never get lucky," or "nothing works out for me," the subconscious takes them as decrees, and turns them into reality. The secret is to turn that inner dialogue into your ally. This doesn't mean forcing shallow positive thoughts, but re-educating the tone of the conversation you have with your own soul. When something goes wrong, instead of thinking, "I failed," say to yourself, "This is a lesson, and divine power is guiding me to something better." That simple shift in language changes your inner energy and transforms your external results. Murphy taught that the subconscious is like a sensitive recorder. It doesn't distinguish between what is a joke and what is truth. That's why every word you speak about yourself is a seed, and sooner or later, it blooms. Every time you praise, encourage, or treat yourself kindly, you fertilize the garden of your mind with harmony. But every time you criticize, belittle, or blame yourself, you plant disorder. If you want health, speak of health. If you want prosperity, speak of prosperity. If you want peace, speak with peace. Your inner dialogue is the channel through which the invisible becomes visible. It decides whether the body will be strong or weak, whether the day will be light or heavy, whether the mind will serve you or enslave you. Murphy said, "The conscious mind is the gardener, and the subconscious is the soil. Whatever the gardener plants, the soil makes grow, without question. So guard your words as one would guard rare seeds. Because what you whisper in silence today will become your harvest tomorrow." Every human being lives within an invisible mold created by their own thoughts. This mold is the set of beliefs, emotions, and mental habits that, repeated over the years, become the hidden structure of one's reality. Joseph Murphy said that it isn't fate that imprisons man, it's the mental patterns he refuses to change. The subconscious mind is like fertile soil, but neutral. It doesn't choose what to plant, it simply makes whatever it receives from the conscious mind grow. If for years you have nourished thoughts of limitation, scarcity, or illness, you have built deep roots that continue to bear bitter fruit. But the good news is that any pattern can be replaced. The mind can be reprogrammed. The first step is to recognize the pattern, not with guilt, but with awareness. Say to yourself, "This thought no longer serves me." The second step is to replace it with a new one. Murphy taught that the subconscious does not accept emptiness, it needs a new instruction. So every time a negative thought appears, do not fight it. Simply replace it with an opposite and positive affirmation. For example, instead of thinking, "Nothing ever works for me," declare, "Everything works together for my good. Divine power guides and sustains me." Instead of, "I'm afraid to fail," say, "I trust the power of life that acts through me." These new declarations are fresh seeds that, with repetition and emotion, replace the old roots of fear and doubt. The subconscious learns through repetition and feeling. The more you feel the truth of the new idea, the faster it will replace the old pattern. And then, as in a fertile field, the harvest changes. Old circumstances dissolve, new paths open, and what once seemed impossible becomes natural. Transforming mental patterns is, in essence, an act of liberation. It is taking back the power from the hands of the past and placing it in the hands of the present. Because nothing outside of you has more power than what you believe to be true within. And when that belief changes, life itself changes with it. There is a moment when human effort ends and something greater begins to act. That is the instant when the subconscious aligns with the divine. When the mind stops struggling and starts trusting, when words stop being pleas and become declarations of faith, the higher intelligence, the one that moves stars and hearts, begins to flow freely through you. Joseph Murphy said that the subconscious is the mediator between man and God. It translates the spiritual into the material, the invisible into the visible. Everything you accept as truth with emotion and conviction, the subconscious transmits to divine power, which responds perfectly and harmoniously. But for this union to happen, fear must be replaced by trust and despair by certainty. When you pray, affirm, or visualize, you are not trying to convince an external force to grant you something. You are actually awakening within yourself the divine presence that has always been there, waiting to be recognized. This is Murphy's true scientific prayer, not to ask, but to know. Not to beg, but to affirm with serenity, the divine power within me is now operating and bringing perfect results. The conscious mind chooses, but the subconscious creates. And when both unite in harmony, when your conscious choice aligns with your deep faith in good, the result becomes inevitable. Everything that once seemed impossible begins to align naturally. Circumstances, people, and opportunities rearrange themselves as pieces of a great invisible plan. This is the essence of divine connection. You stop acting alone and begin to act with the whole. Your words gain power because they are no longer merely human, they become expressions of spirit working through you. And when this harmony is established, life transforms effortlessly, like a river returning to its natural course. Murphy taught that God is the intelligence of your subconscious. It is not something distant, but the very creative principle pulsing within every cell. And when you recognize it, separation ends. You stop asking a distant God and begin cooperating with a present one. When the subconscious aligns with the divine, the impossible dissolves. Fear loses power, the body finds balance, and life flows with peace and purpose. Because at last, the human self becomes an open channel for the divine self, and all that is true, good, and beautiful begins to blossom in silence. There is a silent, almost imperceptible moment when everything changes. There are no lights in the sky or grand sounds, only a deep sense of peace, as if something within you finally says, "Now I understand." It is the moment when the subconscious obeys. When the word that was once just an idea becomes a living conviction, and life begins to respond. Joseph Murphy said that the miracle doesn't happen outside, it happens within. True transformation is not when reality changes, it is when you change inside, and the world merely reflects that new order. At this point, faith stops being an effort and becomes a quiet certainty. You no longer need to struggle, repeat, or insist, because you know the law of the subconscious is at work. Everything that was sown in faith begins to bloom. Thoughts organize, the body regains balance, opportunities appear naturally. The flow of life, once blocked by doubt and fear, runs freely again, like a river that finds its true course. And you realize that you never had to create anything, only allow divine power to flow through you. Murphy taught that obeying the higher mind is not submission, but alignment. When the subconscious fully accepts the commands of faith, everything cooperates, people, circumstances, and even time itself seem to conspire in your favor. Life begins to follow a harmonious rhythm, as if an invisible intelligence were directing every step. This is the moment when struggle ends and trust takes command. You speak less and feel more. You no longer need to prove anything, you simply live in tune with the inner certainty that everything is in divine order. And it is precisely then that the fruits appear, health, prosperity, peace, and love. Not as distant miracles, but as natural consequences of a subconscious that has learned to obey the voice of faith. When the subconscious obeys, life blossoms. And everything that once seemed difficult becomes simple. Because the power you were searching for outside has always been within you, waiting to be recognized. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and say with conviction, "My subconscious obeys divine law. Everything in my life flows with order, purpose, and love." Repeat it not as a wish, but as a declaration of an eternal truth. If this message resonated with you, remember, this is only the beginning of the journey. Subscribe to continue learning, and allow every word from now on to awaken even more of the silent power that lives within you.